This time last year, I saw Power Rangers in theaters for the first time, and there was a lot I liked about it. The characters, the interactions, and the overall scope was more than what I could have hoped for. Of course, there were a few things that I may have been on the fence about, I think the main one being Krispy Kreme donuts. And it's been that way, kind of back and forth, until recently. Let's get started. So in the movie, the Zeo crystals are the power that brings Rita to Earth because she needs this, she wants to steal this, and flash forward to today after she was unsuccessful, they are buried now in the middle of Angel Grove underneath a Krispy Kreme donut shop. Now for like how product placements go, I mean, most of the time, you know, you have these really subtle, inconspicuous inserts. But in this movie, every time they bring it up, every time they mention Krispy Kreme, it's almost as if it's a joke upon itself. It's almost as if it's like integral to the story beyond just a paid product placement. Like I said, in most movies, they try to keep these things subtle, you know, unnoticeable, so that when you leave the theater, you're like, hey, you know, I want to go get some Krispy Kremes, instead of getting hit over the head with it or making it part of the story. I think sort of the opposite of that would be like Stranger Things, where they kind of take the brands of yesteryear and sort of turn it on its head and make it more accessible, you know, like bringing the old stuff back.
This finger looking good.
And people ragged on this movie for having a bad product placement. Like, have you never seen a Transformers movie? I mean, this literally happens.
You better have insurance. Insurance? It's a freaking spaceship. You go get insurance on a freaking spaceship. Good luck with that, buddy. It's your car? Huh? Sweetie, hand me my alien gun.
Like, what? I honestly, and I think everybody should never have a Budweiser again in their life, just how god-awful and terrible that was. Like, that's... So a lot of people online have argued that this inclusion of Krispy Kreme as a product placement does nothing for the story, it does nothing to impact it, it was just a really cheap sort of cash-in, and I think you're wrong. Here's why. So throughout the movie, we're actually introduced to Krispy Kreme as sort of this central hub in Angel Grove for people to come and hang out. Like we have the scene between Kimberly and Trini, who are fighting over the last donut, and in a deleted scene at the very end of that was actually originally where Jason David Frank and Amy Jo Johnson made their cameos. So it's a pretty profitable and a pretty, you know, like heavy commutable place that a lot of people go to. So with the Krispy Kreme destroyed, with most of Angel Grove destroyed, I'm guessing that beyond that, in the sequel, obviously maybe between, you know, 1 and 2, there's insurance that gets filled out, there's redistribution of money, people start to rebuild, and what happens next? What goes up where some of these buildings were? Like, what happens to the Krispy Kreme? And that's where my theory starts. So what was ultimately missing from the 90s show and this movie? Well, I mean, we got the original Rangers, we got Zordon and Alpha, and we kind of had, you know, like a Bulk and Skull, sort of. But we were missing Ernie. You know, the guy that's a super big fan of the Power Rangers, owner and operator of the Angel Grove Youth Center. Now, Ernie was kind of a bigger guy in the original show, and you could probably say if he was transplanted and put into this new movie, he's been to Krispy Kreme a couple times. You could even go so far as to say that he maybe even owned that Krispy Kreme donut shop. Now, with the entire attack by Rita focused on this one shop, if it was his, that would be a huge game changer. It might even open his eyes a little bit, you know, get him to start changing gears. Like, maybe I shouldn't have a donut shop for whatever reason. Aliens don't like donuts or something. So in between this movie and possibly the sequel, we could see them start to rebuild their city. And do you think he would build another Krispy Kreme donuts if he had that in mind? Probably not. See, I'm originally from Minnesota, and Minnesota actually banned flat out Krispy Kremes. They shut them all down just because of their unhealthy options. So if he's not gonna build a Krispy Kreme, what is he gonna build instead? Why not a bigger place for people to come and meet up that has healthy options and a place for people to work out? You know, getting the city a little more proactive and a little more physically fit so that in case of these monster attacks turn into a weekly occurrence, everybody can kind of fend for themselves a little better, maybe? And thus, the Angel Grove Youth Center would be born. I'd actually kind of like to see throughout the second movie this sort of transition, and that's kind of the reveal we get at the end, is that they're friends with this guy who owned Krispy Kreme. We don't even hear his name until the very end of it. And that's when he puts up the youth center and everyone's like, hey, this would be a really good idea, you know, to kind of hang out here. It's kind of the central hub of the city. No matter if anything's happening around, we can, you know, get there faster. I can understand this might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's one that I've been going with this whole time. And if you think about it that way, the next time you watch the movie and you realize that Krispy Kreme isn't just improper ad placement, but it's actually a part of the story, that it actually maybe defines some of these characters and it kind of shapes this future thing by being the complete opposite of it. It's kind of a cool idea. And that is why I'm totally okay with Krispy Kreme in this movie, and it actually makes me like it a lot more. What do you guys think? Make sure to leave a like and comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe, because this Friday we're actually starting a new series that's going to be all on the Tokusatsu video games. I'm sure there's a few that you haven't seen on there before. I'll see you then.